But we're going to welcome in now the voice of the Calgary Stampeders, Mark Stephen, today. And I'm a little worried about him. You got to stay hydrated, Mark. You said after a wild football game you called at McMahon Stadium.
I was sweating after the game. It was just that good. It was that nice of a day and that intense of a game. So there you go.
43-41, the Ottawa Red Blacks in overtime beat the Calgary Stampeders at McMahon Stadium. So Mark's with us for about 11:35. You said you got to leave, right? Mountain time, everybody. So you can get your questions in for Mark, one half of the longest-serving play-by-play crew in the Canadian Football League. He can talk about many things. And there are audience questions coming in, too. Dave Naylor of TSN was with us last hour, but we didn't get to as much with him as we like. We couldn't answer all of your questions. So we're going to fire him at you, Mark. Lucky you. And Zig Fracassi will be joining us from Sirius XM NFL Radio later to talk about the opening of NFL camps. But Stamps 2 and 4. Let's get down to it. I've been dying to talk to you about this. They haven't won a home game yet this year. How's that going over, Mark?
Oh, not very well. It's troubling. It's really troubling for somewhere that was such a fortress for so long. And, it's a 0-3, 2 overtime losses. It's crushing, but they're losses nonetheless. So, no, it's not going very well. And then they've got Toronto and Winnipeg as their next home games coming up. So it's tough. And, they've got to find a way to get it done. They came close a couple of occasions, but it hasn't happened.
Well, I will sprinkle in some of the viewer comments. Jeff in Winnipeg says it's been a wild season so far in the CFL. Some fantastic finishes. And that's a fact. We should go back to last week at Saskatchewan, man. Like, have you even called many that thriller like that?
Well, until this weekend. But no, you're right. That was spectacular in Regina. It was really good. It was part of a three-pack of sensational games. The game before, the Ottawa-Winnipeg game, and the game the night before, Montreal and Toronto. So that was a fabulous advertisement for the CFL.
Folks, I'll get to your comments. Just hang on. I'm just getting the stuff off my chest I wanted to ask Mark, and then I'll turn it over to you people, okay? But, Mark, after that game, and I have a lot of people watching right now across Canada and 31 U.S. states. They follow our CFL coverage. Sask goes up, 1 point with less than a minute to go. What was left when the Stamps took the ball over in Regina? 50
less
seconds?
than a minute. Yeah, I was going to say about 50 seconds. Yeah.
And then you guys marched the other way, 50-yard field goal, kick it, hallelujah, for you. See you later. Stamps win, Rider Nation crushed. You took a picture on the concourse of Rider fans dejected. I'm like, Mark, that's just sadistic.
Oh, well, they're there. They're wandering around.
Have you ever done that before? That's just mean. He takes a picture of the home fans and puts it on Facebook. Dejected Rider fans is what I think.
Okay, well, they're dejected. Too bad. Come back next time.
Well, that's a rivalry. It's not what it was, though. Or is it?
I don't think so. No, not right now. It could ignite fairly quickly, but not right now. I don't think. No.
Yeah. Well, that was like I say, one of the thrilling endings. And so,
very much.
So, okay. Thank you. We got some great questions coming in. Jeff, the Stamps fan, says it's entirely possible, although unimaginable, the Stampeders could be 0-5 at home heading into Labor Day. The next 2 home games leading up to Labor Day are Toronto and Winnipeg. Have you looked that far ahead?
Yeah, and I have, and I think it's very possible. Here's the other thing, too, the Toronto game. Toronto is a difficult opponent under any circumstances, but the Stampeders play a Sunday game in Montreal and come all the way across and have the short week from Sunday to Friday. Every team's going to do it this year or has done it this year, so it's not poor Stamps. But, boy, that is tough. That is really tough. You know, that you have to make that trip to accommodate the Sunday schedule. And a lot of teams, well, everybody has a 5-day week somewhere down the line in their season.
Tell me, well, speaking of travel, from the coverage I heard, because I just came back from Saskatchewan this weekend, this road trip, Saskatchewan playing in Vancouver last Saturday.
That's another one, yeah.
Going to Halifax. Next Saturday is the longest road trip in Canadian Football League history, and they're already on a 2-game losing streak. What is your take on the Green guys before we go back to these questions?
Well, it's clear they're going to struggle, I believe, until Mason Fine finds his footing. Could he? Sure. But he hasn't as of yet. He's also dealing with quite a depleted receiving core. I think Kean Schaefer-Baker is tremendous, and, Walker hasn't been on the field enough to make an impact. So it's going to be tough. Where they go, I don't know. Could Fine do it? Maybe. But he's going to have to because it's his team for the foreseeable future.
Well, the emergence of Dustin Crum has put a lot of pressure on teams that have lost starting quarterbacks when you got a 4th stringer out there winning games.
Yep, very much so. He looks so poised. You talked about maybe the turning point of the game yesterday. I think it may well have been that 12-play drive down the stretch. He looked calm, composed, squeezed the clock, and he looked tremendous. I was really surprised. I wondered, after seeing him initially, if he was just a guy, a wild horse that could run like crazy. Could he do other stuff? The answer is yes, he can.
Well, obviously, I'm following the CFL, but not as closely as I was when it was my job. I haven't really looked into this Crum, but I'm going to have to. Like, what's his story?
Oh, he's from Kent State. He kind of kicked around. He was a good player in the MAC conference and, trying to find an opening in the CFL, and he did. And, it just so happened that there was a couple of openings in Ottawa totally unexpectedly when they lose 2 quarterbacks. Obviously, Ottawa had seen him, and they brought him in, and threw him in, too.
So do you think he's the next one or another Jonathan Jennings, whom I love, but there was a way bigger euphoria over him?
I'm not prepared to anoint him anything just yet. However, you got to be very impressed with what you've seen so far. But 2 in a row is impressive, but hardly the turning point or tipping point in his season.
Yeah, but good. You got to be happy for Bob Dyson.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're on he's their 4th starting quarterback this year. So think about that.
I don't know how you explain what they've done given that situation.
No, I agree. Nick Arbuckle started. He's now slipped on the depth chart. Then it was Mazzoli coming back. Then it was Tariq Adams. He got hurt. Mazzoli and Adams both hurt, and now Crum. Pretty shocking.
I like this question from Kevin Olenek. And as announcers, you and I would appreciate it. He says, Mark, can you talk about the late Dan Carson and his impact in-studio host of the Stampeders? He was the public address announcer for Calgary Stampeders. 30 years?
And for those that aren't familiar with, 30 years with the Stampeders. He did the last home game on June 24th and sadly passed away the following Monday. I mean, it was barely 36 hours after the end of the game. Highly unexpectedly, he'd become a very comfortable presence at McMahon Stadium and had done it all that time. And also I knew him because his real job was at Country 105, an FM station in Calgary, which is under the same umbrella as our station. So obviously I'd see him a lot. So, it was pretty shocking. Just out of nowhere. No warning, no nothing.
Yeah, sad and a good guy, but I always... Of course, as the voice of the Rough Riders for 20 years, he would stick his head in my booth here for pronunciations because he was a professional. And he just pointed at the name Alex Ogbongbamiga.
Yep.
And I'm telling him you should have seen his face. He's like, you're kidding. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
It has gotten crazier, has it not, over the years? Like recently, some of these names are just insane.
Yeah, some of them are, but you gotta plow through it.
You gotta do it, yeah.
Ogbongbamiga, Stampeders drafted one of them, so we'll see if he plays
his
here.
brother?
So,
Yeah.
So there are, just got to find a way to do it, but you're right. Different players, different backgrounds.
But Dan was just... And he got into that Sask-Calgary rivalry, too.
Yeah.
He didn't like the Rough Riders any more than anybody else. Max writes in, and he says, Dustin Crum looks like a younger Zach Caleros. Cool in the pocket, great accuracy. You go along with that?
I think that's a fair comparison. I can see why you would say that. He's got to do it over a longer period, though, to convince me. But you know what? So far, I would say that's a very valid comparison. He just goes about his business with a little flair and flash and gets it done.
I was talking earlier when DuPont was with us about, it's only Monday, right? Everybody wants to look ahead to week 8 already, but let's just go back for a second. We talked about your game. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers beating Edmonton 28-14 in Winnipeg, but it was 6-6 at halftime. What's your read on those two franchises here? Because Winnipeg doesn't look like they were what they were, right? And Edmonton, worst team in football.
First, Winnipeg, at least Edmonton, let's give them credit for hanging in there, but they can't keep putting that kind of pressure on their defense, and that's what they've done all season long. I don't know where they go from there. It's got beyond the point where you can take shots at Edmonton. That seems almost cruel now. They're just so far out of it. Below the rest of the teams. As for Winnipeg, maybe wasn't their best effort, but they're still very good. The issue they're going to run into, whether it's later this year or into next year, is a large group of veterans who are, aging, and maybe the wall hits them sometime this year or maybe in the offseason, but I still think they're very good. I'm not going to get into the dump the Blue Bombers club just yet.
Well, we have a heck of a lot of viewers in Southern Ontario, Argos fans, Ticats fans, and you mentioned they're 5-0, best start since the 60s.
Yeah, that's
with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah. Yep, he is.
It's a great story.
It really is. No, he's done well, and they're a very good team. But where, to me, they've stood out is defensively. They've been so good, and their Canadian content is as good as anybody in the league. I really like the drafting job that they've done over the last few years. So they're a very solid team. You know, the issue with Toronto through the years, they'd have a good team, but then the whole thing would disintegrate in a couple years later, and then they have to stitch it back together. This looks like a team that's built not just for success this year, but longer-term success. There's a plan there. They're not looking over their shoulder. It looks to me it's a very good, very well-run franchise.
Well, I give the credit for that to Pinball Clemens. I think it just flows downhill from there.
Totally. I agree completely.
Yeah.
I know Pinball has that, reputation as a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but he's a pretty dedicated competitor, and he's in there constantly trying to improve the team, working with people. He's not just there, to high-five people in the stands. He's got much more going than that.
Look, you've had longevity. You're in the Hall of Fame, went in the Hall of Fame because of it.
Yep.
Pinball didn't last this long by just smiling. And
that's the issue, yeah. And let's look at it. The last time they had a stretch of sustained success is when he was coaching. Remember, he gave up coaching a few years ago. I think, what was it, 0-4? I don't know what it was. Anyway, in the 2000s, they had a decent run of success where they finished above 500 for 4 or 5 years. Instead of this lurching from top to bottom, top of the mountain, and 2 years later, they're crashing. So, he's far more than, as you say, just over-the-top personality.
I'm sure he'd be very happy to be underestimated as well. I think that's a reason for a lot of his success. Hamilton Tiger Cats 2-4, last place in the East. Naylor said last hour he thinks Orlando Steinauer is safe, and if anybody would know, it's Naylor.
Yeah, I would say so. Well, I guess so. He's got 8 jobs. Not Naylor, but
maybe Naylor does
Orlando
too.
Steinauer too.
Yeah.
But obviously they too have had quarterback issues. Schultz and Bo Levi Mitchell out for extended stretches. So, but I think it's quite a shock. They spent lavishly this season to be in their own Grey Cup, and as I would say, it's not likely at this moment, but there's still time to go.
So that's a look at. We have not yet quite got to the BC Lions, however, and their 19-9 win over Saskatchewan says a lot that they were missing their top guy. And the backup was able to rally them to victory. Yeah,
and it sounds like the injury to Adams is not as serious as first feared. He may miss a game or two, but that's fine. They're still a good team. They're very deep. I like their defense as well, especially their secondary, and BC's a team certainly to be reckoned with. I think at this stage of the season, which is roughly the 1/3, 3 teams have separated themselves. That would be the BC Lions, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and the Toronto Argonauts.
Next segment, we'll get into all the other sports that we've been talking about today. But here in this, we have 3 minutes left. Nelson, one of the viewers, says the Argos currently hold the CFL's highest year-over-year growth in attendance at 28%. He says winning and exciting players is making a dent in the Toronto market. Last hour, a viewer asked about the health of the CFL. How do you feel it is?
Same as it's ever been. There's always 2 or 3 franchises that are scuffling along, and as the crowds are down a little bit, but is that a function of everywhere where live events are not as big as they were? I mean, that's an issue there, but I don't worry about the long-term health. I worry about some teams and where they're going. Obviously, Edmonton is a major problem with the issues there. I know Toronto's attendance is up. I know Calgary's got a lot of work to do. So, but overall, I'm not worried about the health of it. No.
I have less concern over for a variety of reasons. The league doesn't want us talking about it, and I'd rather just enjoy the games because you know what? That's far more interesting to talk about.
I agree totally.
And they've been great.
Entertainment's been nonstop. Yeah, I agree totally. So
Arlen Bruce III's watching. He says in 2004, Pinball Clemens moved mountains. I was a witness.
Yes, you were.
He was there on the team. I mean, that's just a very, very, very special guy, Pinball Clemens. And I guess we give the kudos for their tremendous start to Pinball. Touchdown Atlantics this weekend. You've been in them. What did you like about it?
Well, first of all, we played Moncton, which was a really nice stadium. I could see that being easily converted to a CFL stadium. They want to play in Halifax as the largest city in that market. I was told that things were trending well to getting a new stadium prior to COVID, but then, the city and the province there, everything just shut down, and that was pushed to the margin. So I'm not saying it won't happen. It's been the eternal quest for a franchise there. Hope it happens, but Touchdown Atlantic, I think, is a good test for the franchise. I think it's working. I hope it's a sign of a breakthrough to come for a permanent 10th franchise, which would solve so many issues.
In our lifetime?
Well, I've only been alive for whatever.
How long do we plan to live?
Yeah, I know. That's just the issue. I mean, you've heard about this forever, so that's why I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I mean, the Atlantic schooners have been promised forever and a day, so don't know. But I hope so.
Well, it is a fantastic event, isn't
Yep,
it? They say,
no question.
What do you call it? A tent-pole event on the calendar.
Yeah, very much so. It's a marquee regular season
Yeah.
game, just like the Labor Day weekend is, just like opening weekend is. So, yeah, it's certainly a marquee event, and good for those teams to go back there again.
So there you go, folks. A 100% CFL segment with Mark Stevens. Mark Stevens here, the voice of the Calgary Stampeders. You would know this, Mark Stevens. It ain't Cowboys. The racing crowd's different than Cowboys.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah, very much so. It's just a little different. This is different. It's got racetracks. Going to host the Chuck Wagons here at the end of August, which will be very exciting. So looking forward to that.
World Professional Chuck Wagon Association.
Yep.
Worlds are here, third week in August. So we're all excited to be part of it.
Bonus of that kind of Chuck Wagon racing, the Stampede is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But here you can get right up side by side.
See?
Yep.
4 wide. See, we got a walking, talking advertisement here.
See, four wide. See, Stampede's only 3 wide.
For safety reasons.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I know I'm not just a pretty face. I know.
Yep.
Well, I'm excited to be at all these events here through the month of August. And from Max, from the audience, he says the RP show still the best source for CFL news. Keep it up, guys. Also, sports talk on QR,
Yep.
Calgary.
There tonight. Yep.
And Max says CFL fans love a winner. Note attendance jumps in Toronto and BC and drop in Edmonton. That's sports.
Yep. That's not
anywhere.
unique. Not unique to anybody. Yeah.
We do have to talk about for a second, though, hot dog gate. I can't let you get out of here without talking about them running out of hot dogs at halftime. And I wouldn't have known about it, but I was listening to your post-game show, and the guy said he's going to cancel his season tickets because his grandson was upset they ran out of hot dogs.
Well, the background is they advertised a drink, a soft drink or water, and a hot dog for $3. I think that's quite fair, quite nice. I mean, one of the big complaints at all arenas is the outlandish prices for concession items. So this was a good idea, but when they got to the front of the lot, pardon me, they were gone. They'd run out of them. So I can understand why he'd be pretty annoyed and frustrated. Maybe if they'd have said a limited quantity or a limited time or something, but the implication was it'd show up, buy a hot dog and a drink for $3. And some people couldn't.
It's tough. I'm a little bit on the Stamp side on this one because I owned a restaurant and I know business. And I just remember one time when the Raptors were making their big run, a lot of people were upset that Jersey City in Regina didn't have a Kawhi Leonard Raptors jersey. They couldn't believe it. People are taking to social media. Why don't you have one? Because last week, nobody wanted one.
Yeah.
So it's a supply and demand thing and all the rest. And I'm sure the Stamps taking the fans' complaints.
Well, I hope so because
seriously.
it was a good idea, but you don't want to leave a sour taste in people's mouths. And clearly, somewhere I've seen other social media comments as well.
Well, and it's like literally, hope you had a good enough time and you come back.
Yeah,
right. Because there's a beautiful night.
Yeah.
Everything else
I agree.
great.
I hope that isn't the deciding point for a lot of people, but it's frustrating, I'm sure. For some.
Nelson also writes in, he says, breaking news, Bo Levi Mitchell's practicing today at Ticats practice, meaning the Ticats will be pulling him off the 6th game early. Any thoughts before we move on?
Hope he's healthy.
Yeah.
Love to see it. It's been a rough transition to Hamilton, so hope he's healthy. Let's see if, without seeing the practice or knowing what the circumstances are, I don't know if that means he's ready to play or not, but good for him. Hope he does.
So I'm just going to have you take a swing at our poll question today, which is for Key Auto Group. Key Auto Group, driven by safety. Experience peace of mind with our comprehensive multi-point inspections. Visit keyautogroup.ca for automotive excellence. The question mark is, because our television partner is anchored out of Toronto, Maple Leafs goalie Ilya Samsonov was awarded a 1-year contract worth $3.5 million from an arbitrator on Sunday. 1 year, $3.55 million. He wanted 4.9. The Leafs only wanted to pay him 2.4 million. Is this a good deal or not? Or can't decide? I voted can't decide. What would you vote?
Yeah, he doesn't.
Doesn't make me excited.
No, he doesn't do much for him. And good for him, and good for the Leafs. Good for the no, he doesn't excite me in any way. But obviously, he's got something to offer at Toronto. But doesn't surprise he went to arbitration. But so be it. That's his right.
That's his right, exactly. But I don't think of him as the guy.
No, I don't either. That's why he doesn't do anything for me. I'm not saying he's awful. Just the guy.
Just there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what the salary is. So that's kind of why I can't decide. I guess it's...
Yeah, I'm undecided. I'm not going to sit there and bash it, but I'm not going to praise it either. It's just is.
So we could go down a few roads here. I wrote in my weekend column the 5 things I'm looking forward to the most in the NFL season and 5 things I'm looking forward to the most in the NHL season. And I know you're full on football right now, but you're also a sportscaster.
Oh, yeah. Lots of hockey stuff, I know.
Are you? So what are the 5 things off the top of your head that you would be following this year in the NHL?
Well,
have you been those curious?
Yeah, I guess obviously one of the big ones is Vegas going to be able to repeat?
Yeah, that's one of mine.
They've been, aggressive in the trade market, I got to say that. And a lot of people like that can, Florida bounce back again, or is it just a one-and-done kind of thing? Will Patrick Kane play again? He's obviously a guy that's on the sidelines again. Is there an elite Canadian team in the NHL? I don't think so at this stage. I could be wrong there. And are there some trades still to be consummated, i.e. with Winnipeg and Calgary with some pending FA? So it'll be 5 right off the top of my head that I can think of. There's undoubtedly some other I've overlooked, but those are 5.
Those are 3 of my 5 right there.
Okay.
Those are 3 of them. You didn't mention the Flames and Ryan Huska and Craig Conroy here. And will that exorcise the demons of what that franchise has? Because if it doesn't, then what?
Yeah, but like, Daryl and people before, this team's stuck in the mushy middle.
Yeah.
This is not the worst franchise. There's only 2 teams that have never drafted higher than 4. One of them is Vegas, which is pretty obvious because they haven't been around, and the Flames. So they've never had an elite player. They did draft as high as 4. So they've never had a great draft pick. They've always been good. I mean, this was kind of a tough year. They finished just out of the playoffs. So, they weren't in the playoffs, nor did they get an elite prospect. They got, I guess, a pretty good one at the guy from Vancouver. So I guess it's just a challenge that this team perennially faces to get out of the mushy middle. They're generally there, and, they've, since they won the Cup in 1989, been out of the first round 3 times. That's not exactly, a recipe for success and longevity.
It's quite interesting you say that, because from what I hear from the fans, and quite often I sit in the crowd at the Saddledome, they're like, we'd take being really bad. They want that.
Well, we'll see.
Then you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's to get a high pick. It's what you just explained. Right?
Yeah, it's an issue, but, the easiest part of that approach is the teardown. That's easy. It's waiting the years for all these prospects. If you hit on enough of them, if it all works out. I mean, it's nice to get excited about Edmonton and what they're doing now, but let's not forget, for a decade, they were terrible. And Buffalo went through the same thing. When's the last time they were in the playoffs? I think they got a nice lineup,
and
I do think they've got a lineup that will make the playoffs, but have they? There's a lot of flack flying in Ottawa, too. Where are they? There's the general manager and the coach are really under the gun, and, new ownership coming in, they might have a different approach there.
As I say, beware the fake news, because there's all this talk about Ottawa. They're going to be great. Where's the results? Buffalo, I can see it coming.
Yep.
And I'll give Kevin Adams a lot of credit.
Yep.
Because he had never been a GM before, and he's made some unbelievable trades. Glenn in Medicine Hat. I'll take a real quick answer of this. He says, so Mark and Rod, were you both calling the game on Black Sunday, the 2009 Grey Cup in Calgary? Would be interested to hear both your calls at the end of the game. Well, number one, Mark wasn't.
It was a chorus network thing. I was part of the crew, but I was not broadcasting.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I know the story. They wanted me to call one half of the game. And I thought that was ridiculous. I guess you're used to doing that as a chorus guy. And then they were upset that I was upset. I said, you wouldn't ask a ref to do half the game. I said, all or none, and that's not being arrogant. But I relented and did the first half. Were you in the booth for that?
Pretty sure I was.
Press
yeah.
box, anyways.
That was the press box for sure.
Yeah, and then the second half, Rick Muffin did it.
Yeah.
But at the 13th man thing at the end of the game, my phone, you know how your cell phone, you don't get messages when the stadium fills up, right? It was after the stadium emptied that my phone started going ding, 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 ding. All these messages were coming in, and Rick Moffat was nice enough to say, looks like the Riders are going to win. Why don't you come up and call the end of the game? I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't. Didn't want to be around for that. The top 5 NFL stories with training camps opening up off the top of your head.
Well, here's one. Can Aaron Rodgers,
It's one of mine.
make the New York Jets relevant again? Can Mahomes keep it up? He seems to be the dominant player of this generation. A lot of pressure on him. Can the Arizona Cardinals be relevant? That's a team I follow as well.
There's a lot of Cardinals fans here, right?
Yeah, a lot of people go down there and watch them. Can the Giants come to terms with Barkley, a really good running back? I really like him, but not happening right now. And, we also get a lot of Seattle Seahawks stuff here. Where are they? Denver Broncos got Russell Wilson from them. Where's that going? So those are some of the stories I'll be following.
It is fun to talk about, like, last hour DuPont's included Sean Payton being in charge of the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
If he had to pick a team that he was going to come back to, that wouldn't have been the one for me. Like, I would have thought it would have bigger name franchise, like my Dallas Cowboys or something like that. But obviously he wouldn't have gone somewhere that he didn't think he'd have a chance to win.
Right, I agree. And, he probably got all the assurances from ownership they were going to do a bunch of things. And let's see what happens. Maybe he can revive the picture there.
Jeff in Winnipeg says, yes, me too, Mark. Go AZ Cards. It's been tough slugging there.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much since Bruce Arians left.
Yep, very much so. He had some kind of a touch there with the players, no question. And, Kyler Murray's, we'll see. We'll just see. I don't have a lot of faith in them, but we'll see what happens.
Have you been down to see him play live?
No.
The Cards?
I've seen the Cardinals in preseason, but not, that was before he got there.
I'd like to see him live.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to too. So.
Well, they... I guess they put the eggs in that basket. That's the one thing about the NFL with the money. Once you commit financially, you're done.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Because basically, it's that old too big to fail scenario, right?
Yeah. You'd better produce. Although the Raiders got out from underneath the Derek Carr contract, so I guess you can do it.
Yeah.
But that's about all I have. Any parting thoughts, Mark? It goes.
Just one NFL thing. I'd like to. I want to see which direction Washington goes under new ownership now. That's a franchise that, was one of the more muscular heavyweight franchises for a long time. They've kind of gone to the margins lately, so we'll see. When they've been in the news, it's not for football reasons.
I'd heard that Washington is the best NFL city of the 32 NFL cities, and I would think that's saying some because they're all great. But it's the city that loves their team the most. I've heard that again recently. I've heard it over the years. Have you ever heard that? I heard that about Washington.
I've heard it's a rallying point because so many people come from different places, and that's the one thing you can rally around in Washington. But is the team. I haven't heard that it's the best. I've heard that about other cities too. So I'm not going to say that Washington. I'm sure they do. I don't dispute that, but I've heard it from other cities.
One thing we can agree on is they deserve better than what they've had.
Yep, totally. I agree with that totally. And but it is it's been a franchise. It's had a lot of success a long time ago, mind you. So. Let's see. Let's just see what the new ownership does.
Hey, and last, people are bringing up the name change of the Commanders. Will they stay on or not? One of the Stamps fans I sat with last night on that couch, he believes the Edmonton Elks have not won a home game because they changed the name. Karma. Do you believe it?
Be amazing how if they had a consistent quarterbacking, how the name change would fade into the background.
It's a convenient excuse.
Convenient excuse, yeah.
All right, Mark. Say hi to my friend Dave Dickinson for me, and thanks for coming down.
Okay, good. Yeah, looking forward to it.